But all right. Well, I read your notes in your little feedback form. So is that still like the topic and what you'd like to dive into in terms of like the whole daughter work
Huh.
conversation?
I'm like, remind me what that conversation was.
Just with your oldest two working with you and like rides and all of
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah, it's in my mind, I'm very like I'm a compartmentalizer, right? Like everything's in sections and everything's separate and these are the boundaries and so in my mind it was fine, but my mind's not the only mind I'm working with. There's two others as well. So it's been interesting to navigate that whole process because it's not just, yeah, I can separate it, fine. It's can they and how do I help them
yeah.
know, I'm mom at work or I'm your boss at work, so don't come and just, talk to me the same way you would at home, which sometimes isn't necessarily the way I'd like them to talk to me at home either, but yeah, the boundaries thing is pretty much what that looks like. And then grace, right? Because
Yeah.
there's a benefit too of working with each other, right? Like it doesn't mean that we have to completely put that to the side.
Yeah.
But how do we honor the other staff as well? So, and it's just like I'm having this duh. Of course I'm asking you. Your whole life has been like that, right? Like not just pastor's kid, but
Yeah.
dot dot.
I worked in the same building as my parents. I
Yeah.
drove in with them for a long time. So yeah.
So
Um,
can I have that perspective maybe from you then? What that feels like, what that looks like? What were some,
it was not easy.
yeah,
That's for sure. I mean, I think there's a lot of pieces to it. The one piece was it was harder when I lived at home because I felt like everything I did was with my parents and I was like, okay. But I didn't come home. I went to college first, which is probably what made it more difficult.
right.
Right. So I lived at home. I lived at home during SLI. So I got a ride in. But the thing is like we went to school in the same building as my parents. So like up to grade 12, like we all carpooled together every single day to school and to work. And then I stuck around for another year and did SLI. So it was every day. So then I graduated. I was doing my own work stuff. Um, and then I moved to Australia for 2 years. So when I came home, it was also like I'd experienced independence
Right.
and then suddenly had it no longer. So that was probably the bigger part of it. Like I hadn't lived with my parents for 2 years and now suddenly I was back, but I was way more independent, like had figured out things that I like to do that was not how they like to, like there was just this whole element of feeling like that was kind of taken away. But I had my own vehicle, which really helped. Um, so basically when I came home, I was just responsible for me and that was it. Like,
Yeah.
no, there were no reminders. Like I was an adult and it was my job and you know what I mean? Like it was very kind of like I worked anywhere, at least when I was at home. Now sometimes we'd talk about things at home a little bit or whatever, but like for the most part, it was pretty separate.
Yeah.
I would say though, like my dad always did say, he's like, you know, if you were at work somewhere and something happened and you would call me as your dad because something was crazy or like had gone really wrong or whatever, and you needed to talk to me as your dad, like you would if you worked anywhere.
Yeah.
He's like, then come see if I'm in my office.
Right.
But when you come in, I need you to say, hey, do you have 2 minutes to be my dad?
Nice. Yeah.
And so he's like, just preface it. Let me know which hat you want me to wear.
Yeah.
And if you need me for 2 minutes, like I would answer the phone if you called me.
Right.
So if you need me, come find me.
Yeah.
So just knowing that that was an option. I mean, I didn't take him up on that very much because well, I was young in a very male dominated work environment and trying to prove that I actually had the skills to do what I was hired to do and that I wasn't just hired because I was you know what I mean? Like there was
Yeah.
that whole thing. And so like I worked really like I specifically tried to, and I called him pastor right from the get-go when
Yeah.
I came back because I was like, I'm going to call him what everyone else calls him. And
Yeah.
I'm going to treat him like everyone else treats him. And so that was really important to me because I was trying to prove my value to other people because I didn't feel like other people thought I was qualified.
Right.
Back, I was way qualified. You know what I mean? I did an amazing job and like they had to hire 2 people to replace me. So like I know that I did a good job, but
Yeah.
so much of my journey in those first few years was trying to prove myself. So, which I think is healthy in a way because we all need to go through that realizing like we have to earn our job and
Yeah.
whatever job it is. Right. So just because we know someone or we got a referral or, you know, we knew someone in the company, like it happens all the time, even if it's not family. Like a lot of people get their jobs because they already know someone in a company. So like that's not a new thing, but it
Right.
is different when it's your parent who is in like a pretty high place. Like it's just a little bit different. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that is enlightening at all, but
No, it's good
that's
because
the biggest struggles I had.
yeah, it confirms about maybe 2 months ago, we Madison went and got her own car. So she's leasing her own car for now. So it gives her that I think it really helped her with that mental space of I
Yeah.
have my independence. This is my car. I can go. I can schedule it whenever I want. Whereas before it was like it was all about can I have the car as opposed to like see ya. And she needs that. She's 20. Hello.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to see that more. She tends to be more of a homebody and will stick close to me. And that's interesting to parent because I was so like my dad growing up was a pastor as well. So like it was like, no, I am my own person. See ya. So, and you know, we helped her get into college. We did some paperwork for her. We made her get her a driver's license, like right, like so. I feel like we're pushing her all the way along, but now she feels like it feels like she's more in her own skin,
Yeah.
which is good.
We all just like go through that process at different paces, right?
Yes, yeah,
So,
and I think yeah, that's a big part of it. It's just they're in this trying to find themselves still, so it's awkward. And then yeah, I'm good at compartmentalizing until I realize, wait, I didn't compartmentalize that correctly. I'm looking at them because I know they're my daughter and I know how they think, as opposed to, you know, I wouldn't have that perspective necessarily as
you wouldn't know as much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wouldn't make as many assumptions of someone else that I do of them. Right. So it's like,
Oh yeah, true. Like I would get the glasses down, like make me feel like I was 5 again look from my mom sometimes. And I'm like, you do not give anyone else that look. Like that's not fair.
no, exactly.
Because it works for me, but it doesn't work for anyone else and you don't give it to anyone else. So I'm like,
Yeah.
there are aspects of that where I just would be like, that's not fair. I'm actually not letting that affect my work, but that took a long time for me to get to that point because I would feel young and then I'd feel insecure and then I would like work out of that for a day or two, or then I'd try to prove more and be like, you know, and so it's just like there is that element of, you know, with what you know, how would you handle the conversations exactly like they were somebody else that you worked with.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
true.
I know that you had mentioned on maybe one of the mastermind calls that your morning routine and schedule kind of before the girls worked with you changed a lot. So like talk me through what it was like before, because you were in a really good like routine and groove with that.
Yeah, I think it was just autopilot, and I've trained the girls to be pretty independent, routine wise in the morning. So like they got themselves ready in the morning. They had different times that they left the house, and statistically, I was leaving the house before them. So I was up, ready, showered, coffee in hand, out the door.
Right.
And now it's like I'm waiting at the door, like we have to go. I wanted to leave 5 minutes ago. Like, and so it changes the whole atmosphere for my day when I'm facing that. So we've tried to eliminate that. And I think we've done really well because my growing up, it was like early is on time is late, right? And so that's just bred into them too. So that helps, except their early isn't as early as my early for work. And so
Right.
it just shifted.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then coming into work at the same time, right? Like I change my shoes and go to the kitchen to grab my coffee, and it was by myself. It was me time. It was bliss, right? And now I'm tripping over them while they're doing the same thing.
Right.
So it's just so many of those things that I hadn't considered, right? As
Yeah.
I transitioned into this. So yeah. And it's like, I feel silly saying it out loud in some regards because I'm like, it's so not a big deal, but I
But
need
when
to.
you have a routine like that and you have your space and you have a way that like sets you up for the work and you're coming in by yourself before the office is open and like doing your thing, to suddenly not have that, it is a shift. Or you're used to driving by yourself and now suddenly you've got somebody in your time. So you're not having your like set up time for your day.
Yeah,
So you definitely do have to switch things around.
yeah.
Um, we had a specific time that we left for school, and my mom would like knock on our doors if she hadn't seen us at a certain time or like whatever. But like we were responsible to get ourselves up and like ready and whatever. And many times we left the house without my brother. And he would bike to school.
Wow.
He had a certain amount of warnings, and at a certain time, she's like, I'm not going to make every single other person in our family late. Like,
Right,
I'm not going to be late for work. Your sister's not going to be late for school just because you did not get out of bed.
right.
So at a certain time, he'd had his 3 warnings or whatever, and she's like, "We are driving away at this time," and she would drive away.
Love
Um,
it.
so there is a bus in Elmira.
There is. There is. It's true.
Oh dear.
True. Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so you had already said, kind of in your form, as I type this, I can see us having like a weekly calendar date to look at who needs what when. So I say absolutely yes, as like a practical solution in terms of creating a schedule for like rides and work and whatever. But I mean, I just think that that's healthy to do like as a family.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like even with your youngest, who needs, okay, oh, well, okay, can you, Maddie, can you drive here in this time? And like, like when I had my own car, I chipped in with driving my siblings. Like that was just part of it. Well, specifically before I didn't have my own car, when I was using mom and dad's, they're like, sure, you can have the car, but you have to take your brother to soccer, go do your thing and pick him up and bring him home before you can like, you know what I mean? Like that was all like part of it. Once I had
Yeah.
my own vehicle, not so much, but there was still that element of like, you're still part of the family. You
Yeah.
still help out. And if we need you to drop somebody off or pick somebody up, like we
Yeah.
made it work. So I think even just I think not even just focusing on the car situation, but even just like to do it as a family, to like sit down and go day by day, and you're sorting out cars, but you're also sorting out who's home, who's making dinner what night, all the ride situation, who's out, making sure that like whatever's important to you guys, whether it's like 2 nights or 3 nights a week where you're all home and eating dinner together, like, okay, which nights of the week are that? When do we have extra people? When are you guys out? And like, just as like, let's just like talk and know what's going on. And you can take the opportunity to be like, all right, what's the biggest thing going on for you? And if you want to, close in prayer by just going around the circle and praying for each other's big thing or whatever, or, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't, but just like as a way of kind of like building that communication. But if you make it not just about the cars and the work, but it's like about everything and just like understanding what's going on in life and like writing it down, even like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you have like a whiteboard calendar, but having like a weekly whiteboard calendar where then you can put it on and maybe people have different colors or
Yeah.
whatever, but it's just like, okay, you're working here. Like my parents had one. I think it was once me and Bryce were married and it was just Caitlin at home. They got a whiteboard and basically they said, you are this color, we are this color. And they each wrote down, because Caitlin was not home that much. Like her work shifts were all over the place. She was at school. So she would write down like when she would be gone. So she'd say like 8 to 2 school and then 4 to 8 work. And like for each day of the week. And like she would write down all her shifts. And then if my parents were away or if they were like not home for dinner, like they would write that stuff too, because it's just as important for her to know, because then she has to make her own food. And you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So something like that, where it's like really physical, you can really see it is.
Yeah.
Super.
I like that.
Yeah.
I really like that. Yeah, because even with Rob traveling all over the province, basically, he's, I never know when he's home or what day, because another confession is Charlie's been doing some things at school and gotten lots of trouble and is online doing things. So we've taken all of her devices away and committed as a family that she won't be home alone anymore. So that means one of us three at the office, or Rob has to go and pick her up from school at 3:00, which,
Oh, wow.
yeah, it has been, because otherwise most of us work till 5:30. That means she's home for like 2.5 hours by herself, with nobody parenting her. So the other two had each other. They've always been like, they're only 14 months apart. So like they're a package deal, whereas her being by herself is a big deal.
Yeah, especially if she's already been pushing boundaries and
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to her principal. She's like, we know her heart. She's fantastic. You're going to be laughing at the rest of us when our kids are 17 and going through that thing. I'm like, yeah, but she's 13. It's just crazy. So anyway, that's been a interesting process. So yeah, it's again a big commitment driving back and forth again to Elmira, right? That car situation to get her at 3:00. And the answer is like right in my face, but the more I know sometimes what the answer is, the more I buck it somehow. It's ridiculous. Like,
you're not the only one.
good. Just connecting as a family with that, like, because every day now it's on my brain during the work day. I'm like, okay, so I'm waiting to hear from Rob if he's going to be able to pick her up, or, you know, like to know that ahead of time for the whole week, to know these are the days I'm getting her is fine, because if it changes for him in the day that, you know what, I am in the area on time, he can just let me know that then, as opposed to me waiting all day. Okay, now it's like 2:30. I have to go out the door. Am I leaving? Are you getting right? Like,
Yeah.
it's just that doesn't need to be a thought process. So just, yeah, connecting as a family. And yeah, I think that's a great idea. I love the idea of praying for each other's big thing for the week, because that is just, when you were talking about earlier about being responsible for other people's, like bringing Bryce to soccer or whatever, right? Like, not only was it you helping your parents, but it was also intentional time with your brother, right? And
Yeah.
I want that.
Oh, yeah. Not that he always said much, but
but not a lot of words need to happen when you're together.
It's still
right?
time together, right? In the car, dropping off.
Yeah, it's foundational for sure.
So do you guys pick her up and then bring her back to the office to finish working? Like you just take an hour basically and you drive and...
It depends. For a lot of the time, yeah, we bring her back to the office and she sits in one of the offices while we finish our day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. I had another. I'll just share with you yesterday what happened. Talking about the whole striving for, you know, independence and proving you're capable. I struggling with when is it enough, right? And it was like, I'm always striving to prove I'm worthy, which is stupid. Like, it's a stupid, unhealthy perspective. It just is. But it's not until yesterday I was sitting with Andrea, and we had just been in a feedback with her son. So her son had done some reassessments here at the office, and some amazing, fantastic results. And so it was Matthew that was giving the feedback, and then I was sitting there with Andrea and her son, and he's kind of saying things, and I'm making circles on my chart because that means we're going to change his program. And nothing in my mind, right? Like, it's always, okay, I'll make these circles, but I'm going to confirm that that's right with Matthew after. But Andrea came away from that saying, like, she was watching Matthew say words and covering up the paper. So I couldn't see from my perspective what he was indicating because I was on the angle to the side. And she's like, and I'm watching you make the circles. Like, he didn't tell you what one to circle, and you're just making the circles. And it was blowing her mind that, like, she just knows her stuff. And in my mind, when I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure he means this, so I'll mark it and I'll make sure. And that's my MO, like, all the time. I'm so unsure, and I want my butt covered so bad that I'm never pushing myself out to this place of, not that it's always uncomfortable in my mind because I'm insecure in that realm, but I do believe that God has called me to this position, and I need to stand up in it. And it's, I mean, there's no denying that God calls us to where we are for every season. And I knew that when Pauline passed away, it was like that part of me was ripped away, because she was always my cover. Like, I think it's this, but I'll check with Pauline, and I think it's this, but let me confirm with Pauline. And that was so comforting to me, because that's how I choose to do life. I never want to, I don't know, I just think it's a huge vulnerability that I've never chosen. And with her being gone, and Matthew's like my partner in crime here, like, he's always gonna be the one where the buck stops with him, and I love that. But at some point I just need to stand up and be brave, and it's been more terrifying than I thought. But also it was so rewarding to hear Andrea acknowledge and say that it's in you, it's there. Like, how do you doubt it? And it's like, I doubt it every day. And to hear it from her perspective was like, okay, now I just need to be brave. I just have to stand up. And I will get things wrong, and that's okay. And that's where, giving my best and my all, that's where God can cover it. And it's not until I stand up and do that he can do that. And there's other people that are missing. I mean, as we've said in the mastermind, people need to hear my story, and people, to stay silent and try to make sure I have it all together isn't, like, that's not going to honor anyone. So anyway, I don't know where I was going with that, but
I think it's really encouraging though. And like, here's the thing, whenever any of us have a job or career where like we actually need someone to like look at our stuff as we're like learning and growing, like, it's always hard because it's hard for both parties, right? Like, it's not just hard for you, it's also probably hard for Matt, because he's like, well, I want her to be able to make these decisions because I believe that she can at a meeting circle stuff and go ahead and like give the new system and just work with the staff and go for it. But I also want to be there to like support her in that decision or help her know that she is on the right track. And like, if I don't do that? You know what I mean? Like, how do I encourage her to do this without like approving or checking or whatever, right? So like, I think it's on both sides. Like, you want to do this and he wants to let you do it, as long as there's the confidence there. And so I just think like, I mean, you stepping into it, part of it is just like stepping into your confidence and being like, I can do this. That doesn't mean you're not going to get things double checked.
Yeah.
But you're not getting it double checked so that you know that you're worthy. You're getting it double checked for the sake of the client. Being like, because you're basically getting it 95% of the way there and being like, yes, we good, go ahead. And it's like, yes, go for it. You know what I mean? That's just wisdom in terms of making sure that there's two sets of eyes. Or same thing when you're working with the client, like, or your therapist, like getting them to do and say, this is what I think we should do based upon this. And you're coming in to just say yes, or tweak a couple things, not because they're wrong, not because they're not qualified or don't understand the client, just because there's wisdom in two perspectives. So I feel like you see it that way with them.
Yeah.
But you don't necessarily see it that way with you. So you need to think about yourself as the therapist, and Matt is like you.
Yeah.
And and you're doing, and you're competent, but two sets of eyes is always better than one. You know what I mean? And I struggle with that so much. Like with modern planner stuff, like if I'm doing something or creating something, and then like, because I get either Joseph or my assistant will like look something over. But it's like, if Joseph's like, oh, I'm not sure. Like, sometimes I take it so personally. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I can't even run my own business. Like, I'm so bad at this. And blah, blah, blah. But it's like, the reason why I'm asking him is because I want it to be better.
Yes.
And he's bringing his best to the table.
Yeah. Yep.
And sometimes his best is better than my best. And that's okay. And
but
sometimes
it makes the end product fuller, right? Like that's what it's about.
Yeah, but it's hard. It's hard on her. Like for me, it's hard on my ego. That's the way it goes. Because I'm like, I'm not good enough. Because that's my lie that I believe, is that I'm not good enough. So I'm like, I'm not good enough to run Modern Planner on my own. Like, I need you, because otherwise all this stuff would be so bad. And anyway, but I just think like shifting for you and seeing like how you believe in your therapist, and you're wanting them to like do stuff on their own and make decisions, but then they're still running them by you because there's wisdom in that. I think if you can see that as you're the therapist and you're just running things by Matt because there's wisdom and there's safety in that numbers, but just know like, and girl, you probably just need to write yourself, well, not probably just, but like one of the things that might support you would be like writing yourself a bit of like, a mantra, a confession, you know what I mean? Something like that's an affirmation. Like, I am competent. I know my stuff. I am really smart.
Yeah, it's funny because for my Mrs. Hunt Instagram account, it's I am enough even when, because it counteracts my core belief of I'm not enough.
Yeah.
And so that's where that phrase comes from. And yeah, I think I'm enough even when I don't feel like I'm enough, or, when it's scary as heck to be the one that's ultimately accountable for the programming, right? Like, it's a big responsibility. And I think that's where both Matthew and Pauline have always been entrepreneurs, right? Like, they're just creatives. They just want to go. And that's awesome. But I've loved that I have them as my ultimate accountability. And so that's a beautiful gift, but it doesn't mean that I can't still do my 95% and get that 5% check off. Like that's
exactly. And I think yesterday on our monthly kickoff call, I out loud self-talked in the middle of the call because I was talking to, I'm like, I know, I can't believe, like, we're in June, this year is flying by, and I was like trained, and all of a sudden, like, I was getting anxious because I was talking about how fast the year is going, and I was like, okay. I'm like, we're just going to pause that. I'm choosing to get off the train. Yeah. I am doing these things and creating this stuff and creating a plan because I'm intentional and I'm deciding how fast this year is moving. Yes, the year is going to move and it's going to go at speed, but like, I'm deciding the pace that I'm going to live, and I don't choose rushed.
Yeah.
I choose intentional. And
Yeah.
so I was like, and I literally said all of this out loud on the call. I was like, thank you guys. Just so you know, I do that all the time. And like when my mind gets going and I talk to myself out loud because it like snaps me out of like, cause I can just run away in my brain. So
Yeah.
when I will literally be doing whatever it is. And then, okay, Catherine, stop. What you are talking about and thinking about right now is not supporting you. You know what I mean? And I just do that.
Yeah.
So I think if you have that, like your affirmation, I am enough, even when,
Yeah.
okay.
Got
Krystal.
it. And it's powerful to say your own name.
Oh, so powerful.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good.
So, yeah. Yay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Oh, so good. Well, I hope you have a wonderful day. I will upload this to YouTube and send you a link on
Thank
Slack so that you can rewatch it if you want to rewatch it.
Perfect.
So, yeah, sound good?
Sounds wonderful. Have a wonderful family time.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to it.